All right, I'd like to call this November 21st, 2013 Cookeville City Council meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilman Anderson.
Present.
Councilman Woodford.
Present.
Mayor Swallows.
Here.
Vice Mayor Epps.
Here.
Councilman Albright. 4 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Would everyone please stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Consider approval of agenda as presented. Do we have additions to the agenda?
We have 2 items to add. Item 9, consider awarding bid for Face Pieces Fire Department, sponsor Roger Fuqua. Item 10, consider awarding bid for exterior renovations for CPAC, Leisure Services Department, sponsor Rick Woods.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for approval on the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
I'll vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
All right, old business. Consider approval of minutes of council meeting held on November 7th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
I'll vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Before we get started into the rest of the old business and the new business, we have a little presentation. Ms. Melinda Kiefer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is my privilege and honor to stand before you tonight to share with you some great information and an announcement that we have. If you'll recall, back in 2010, Cummins Filtration, through a partnership and a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, approached the city of Cookeville about starting Cookeville Unplugged. At that point, we recruited and trained energy leaders for the city of Cookeville and saving energy within our 22 facilities. Because of that beginning action, because we started a culture of being sustainable and trying to make sure we were being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars and that we were saving money and energy, a few months ago we were approached with an opportunity from TVA to apply to become a Valley Sustainable Community. So we took a look at the program and decided it was something that we should do. In the weeks that followed, we came together and created a sustainability team. We put together a sustainable inventory. Some of our team members are here tonight. I'd like to introduce to you, and if you would please be recognized, Mr. George Halford, the Cookeville Putnam County Chamber of Commerce, Tony Peak, Karen Brown, Tracy Johnson, Tracy Meggs, Rick Woods, James Mills, and Ken Young of the city of Cookeville. So all of our city people, if you'll please raise your hand. Also, Mr. Dave Rydell with the Cookeville Regional Hospital, Lisa Luck with the Cookeville Putnam County Clean Commission, Jason McCormick with R-Cube Recycling, and then Andy Loftus and Jack Barton with Tennessee Tech University. I'm honored to have Mr. Mitchell Kemp with Cummins Filtrations here. Mitchell was one of our instructors in our initial program. At this time, I would like to announce that Cookeville has been recognized as a Valley Sustainable Gold Community by the Tennessee Valley Authority. The Valley Sustainable Communities Program was initiated by TVA Economic Development to help communities tout existing sustainable program strengths and increase their potential for attracting new investment and jobs in their community. We recently completed the program sponsored by TVA and it was developed and administered by Boyette Strategic Advisors. The program documents our community's assets to increase the likelihood that it will be viewed as a progressive and competitive by all companies looking to invest or expand locations in our city. Sustainability has become a key issue for economic development organizations and communities as more corporations have demonstrated an increasing commitment to sustainability. more than 90% of corporate real estate executives who responded to a survey on sustainability said that it is a consideration in their company location decisions. The typical reasons for this corporate commitment are reduced operating cost, for increased profitability, and greater employee satisfaction. At this time, I would like to give you my personal testimonial. 2 weeks ago, we turned in one of the largest RFIs we've ever been presented with from a company, and I was able to present to the question, what are the sustainable practices in your community? I was able to tell this company that we were a gold status with the Valley Sustainable Communities Program. So at this time, I would love for our team members to come up for a quick picture. And then, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council, we would love to have Mr. Mitchell, Kemp Mitchell, if you would come up for just a moment. Because of Cummins Filtration's partnership and their commitment to us, at this time we'd like to award him, and one for Tim Brown as well, a key to our city. We really appreciate all of Cummins' partnership. And could our sustainability members real quick come up for a picture real quick? We'll be able to use this sign,
Before you leave.
our gold seal, on all of our economic development marketing materials. The Chamber will be using it on their website, as well as anything that we produce here at the City of Cookeville. So, Brittany, real quick. Yeah. Tall people in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, be sure and do that. Going to break the camera.
You're the man.
Thank you.
Okay.
No. Love you dearly. Thank you all so much.
Good job.
Jack, get up there. Please. Hurry, hurry. Thank you very much. Council, thank you very much for your support in this effort.
Melinda, I don't know if you pointed this out, but because of this initiative, it saves us a little over $80,000 a year
Just for our facilities
just for our
alone.
facilities. I mean, that's
Impressive.
very impressive.
Thank you very much.
Wish more communities were doing this, and I just love the idea that just when public and private enterprise get together, that these sort of things can happen, and it just takes just a little willingness just to listen and just to
Open mind.
just open mind, put yourselves together, and get things done. I appreciate it.
Well, it's also helped us on the economic development, where an
Absolutely.
industry has paid attention to this, so it's thank everybody involved.
Little old Cookeville.
Yeah, thanks for all you guys do. All right, on to item 3. Consider on second and final reading ordinance 131015, closure and abandonment of a portion of Laurel Avenue located between West 7th and West 8th Streets and declaring it a surplus. Sponsors Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, the portion of Laurel Avenue that's being considered on second reading for closure and abandonment and declaration as surplus and being made available for acquisition by the adjoining property owners is depicted on the screen. Here's an aerial view of the section of right-of-way. View showing the utilities. This view shows that it runs currently from 7th to 9th. Here's the actual survey that was submitted. The request, or this was initiated at the request of the owners of the property on either side of the right-of-way. They've indicated they would like to acquire this right-of-way and incorporate it into the proposed University Square Phase 2 RAO development, for which was approved on first reading at last meeting. The Planning Commission recommended for approval of the closure and abandonment and declaration of surplus property with conveyance of right-of-way to the adjoining property owners subject to compliance with the municipal code. The Planning Department concurs with this recommendation. The petitioners have also requested that the council consider the conveyance of other property, specifically property for widening the right-of-way on North Willow Avenue in lieu of the required payments. I've had no specific calls on this, although I did respond to an I'd like to know since first reading.
That was it?
Yes.
That's all. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mills. Do you have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
After we discussed it the last time, I made a point to go over there and look at the property and particularly since some folks were talking about the way it appeared those buildings were so close to the sidewalk. And the day I went, they were building a wall in front of them, and it really does make a big difference. And I think the height of it just made it appear closer to the street, but it looks good. And they're certainly improved the look of that corner.
Also, I don't think this is going to put a hardship on the people in that neighborhood trying to get out to Willow. Instead of going down Laurel, they could go down Chestnut. So it's not, I don't feel it's putting a hardship in people trying to get a shortcut to get out safely onto Willow.
Yeah.
And we haven't done traffic count.
Yes, we did, and this, I didn't want to go over it all again this on second reading, but we did do traffic counts on not only Laurel, but also Chestnut, which would be the alternate route here, which we would believe that traffic would use. It was 235 cars a day. Chestnut carries 330, so it's less than 600 cars a day on a street, which is very minimal. Most of the traffic, we looked at traffic patterns. What the patterns were basically was people were cutting through on Laurel and then going back Chestnut. Now they just use Chestnut both ways. Chestnut's less than 300 feet to the west, provides the same access north-south. As a matter of fact, Chestnut is a continuous street all the way to Broad.
Right.
Laurel only went from 7th to 9th to begin with, so it's not, and I think that's part of the reason why the Planning Commission and the Planning Department both felt favorable about this. It was already a minor street, only going 2 blocks.
Anything else? Anything from the audience? All right. Seeing none. All vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. On to item 4. Consider on second and final reading ordinance 1310-16, the RAO redevelopment area overlay district zoning for University Square Phase 2, which includes the following properties: 345 to 365 West 7th Street, 712 to 716 Laurel Avenue, 350 to 364 West 8th Street, and 721 Chestnut Avenue. Sponsored Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, as we noted at first reading, this is our second RAO, and it is Phase 2, or would be a Phase 2 of the University Square. And you can see on the map where this proposed RAO is located. It's located entirely within an area identified in our comprehensive plan. Our 2030 plan is being in need of redevelopment or revitalization, so it meets the conditions to be approved as an RAO. The underlying zoning on this is RD, single family and duplex residential. And the ordinance we just approved, this RAO request was done in conjunction with the closure and abandonment and acquisition of the right-of-way of Laurel Avenue, that segment between 7th and 8th. Here's a view, here shows the property within our redevelopment areas identified in our 2030 plan. Here's an aerial view of the property as it currently is. Here's the existing zone. Again, it's zoned as RD, underlying zoning. Larger scale map, existing land use within the area. As you can see, it's currently used primarily as a mobile home park, which is non-conforming within the RD district. And on the screen now is the preliminary RAO concept plan. And as you can see from the plan, it indicates it would have 40 units on it. It would be similar or like the University Square Phase 1 in appearance and also in floor plans. These are 2 stories. 2 bedrooms in the upstairs with 2 baths with the living area, kitchen areas on the first floor. Approval of the plan also includes an increase in the density of 24 units, a reduction of building setbacks on West 7th and West 8th Streets. Also, it includes assistance in street lighting and with the sidewalk replacement from the city. According to the submitted development plan, all the existing structures would be removed within 6 months after approval of the RAO, with new construction beginning thereafter and to be completed within 2 years following approval. The plan also shows that sidewalks would be installed on West 8th and Chestnut Avenue, and rain gardens would be utilized for stormwater detention instead of a detention pond. Existing sidewalks on West 7th Street would be repaired or replaced where needed. All the units are accessed from interior streets, which are private streets maintained by the owners of the properties. Parking would be off these private streets. There's no direct vehicle access to a public street. And again, we think this will help control traffic and make it a much safer situation getting in and out of this. Canopy trees to be planted along all street frontages. And there's a large green space area provided in the center of this development available to the residents within this development. Assuming the overlay is enacted tonight, the Planning Commission will consider for approval the final RAO plan and a preliminary subdivision plat at its meeting on November 25th. The final RAO plan must substantially conform to the preliminary RAO plan, which is what's on the board here. Any changes to this plan must be resubmitted to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is recommending for approval of the preliminary RAO concept plan for the development of the 40 single-family attached dwellings, subject to the closure, abandonment, and acquisition of the right-of-way of Laurel Avenue between West 7th and West 8th Streets, and approval of the requested setback reductions with recommendation to the council for the enactment of the RAO zoning, waiver of the fence permit fees in the amount requested, which was $1,025, for authorization of the requested assistance in street lighting and sidewalk replacement. The Planning Department concurs with this recommendation, and we've received no calls or comments since first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Questions, comments?
No.
Questions, comments from the audience?
I have a
Yes, sir.
question. When this was considered, back to my pet peeve of moving into 7th Street, could not the footprint have been considered to push to 8th Street, leaving 7th Street the full width? In other words, 8th Street only stops at Chestnut anyways, like Laurel. It just seems to me there's been an oversight on moving over on 8th Street when you've got a traffic light at 7th, and I'm just asking, maybe for phase 2 at least, you would chuck the thing over a little bit on 8th Street to leave at least that part of 7th Street full width. I know it'll stick out like a sore thumb, but
7th Avenue is full width. The street has not been reduced in size. And as we talked about at first reading, this development involved the dedication of right-of-way from the owner's property to the city of Cookeville for the potential widening of 7th Street and also 8th Street and also Chestnut, a minimum of 5 feet off of 7th. The reductions were down to 15 feet for the setbacks. The minimum setback requirement in the RD district is 20 feet. So these comply with the zoning setback requirements that were in place prior to the establishment of the RAO. And again, and Alma touched on this just a minute ago, I think it's a matter of perception because these are two-story structures. Also, and we talked about this before, that the structures that were there before, the mobile homes and the homes, were all in violation of setbacks. So this meets our requirements for setbacks, and again, I believe it's a matter of perception as you're seeing a tall structure, and it also has to do with bulk and density. It is a large-scale development, but it meets setbacks, and there was no narrowing of 7th Street.
no, but when you're coming down 7th Street from the hospital, you've got a much wider platform. And then when you get to Willow, you do narrow down, even though you may have not narrowed 7th Street. You have, by perception at least, on your way into the low-income housing, you have eliminated the possibility of keeping it at the 7th Street width east of Willow.
But east
We've
of,
never had that width. I mean, we never had that availability anyway. But we do have with this option an extra 5 feet to expand the width of 7th that we didn't have before. Is that correct, Mr. Mills?
Yes, and there, we briefly touched on this. They are in the process of constructing a retaining wall along the sidewalk on the north side. That is within right-of-way. If the street ever does need to be widened, and it's incumbent on the property owner to pay for anything that needs to be removed and replaced within our right-of-way. They assume responsibility for that, the liability for that. And that's will be noted on the final RAO plan.
Yeah. But
So there is right-of-way to widen the street if it has to happen in the future.
But Seventh Street east of Willow, you've got a turn lane. So I guess you got 3 lanes going down to 2, and it does go that. But on the east side, you need access into the hospital and Tennessee Tech, so you have to have turn lane.
Well, we've noted this as this area develops, and we hope this continues in this area. The turning lane that's on the west side of Willow on 7th as you're approaching Willow may have to be lengthened. Come back further, there's enough right-of-way to do that. It jogs now, but there is enough right-of-way. When you're right at the intersection, where it jogs to make the turning lane, those look the closest, and they're right at 15 feet. But when you go on back, we've got that additional right-of-way that was dedicated so that the turning lane could be installed if it's determined necessary.
I have one more comment,
Yes, sir.
and I agree with what he just said. When I came around the corner yesterday on 7th, there was a city bus, the MTA bus, full length, and then behind him was 2 more cars. So the turning lane was not an option for them, as he would want to turn right, So if you have the opportunity to take that turning lane a little further west, I think that would be helpful.
That may actually have to happen.
we may have to do that.
We'll monitor that, as this area develops. But we're aware that that may be needed.
And we have the opportunity, I guess one of the beauties of this project is that we have the opportunity to improve that intersection. And that I run by there all the time. I work there. I see that intersection all the time, and it's a dandy. I mean, there's wrecks there all the time, etc. Part of the problems we have are that it's a state-owned road, so we have we just can't show up and say we just want to enlarge it. We have to have
But
approvals.
7th Street is the city.
Yeah, so it gets kind of complicated. But one of the things I appreciate what our planning commission has done, and our city council member Mr. Woodford has been part of that, is that they're very cognizant of trying to maintain safety concerns on this street. So what I'm hearing is we're actually getting better. What we've got right now, even though the perception is it might be smaller, et cetera, we've got an opportunity to even actually make it even better. And with TDOT's help, it can actually maybe safe for once in a long time. Maybe that's a little strong word, but I just appreciate all the work that's been done trying to check our P's and Q's and get this done right. I'm going to vote for it because of that.
Well, Larry, that's a good point, and we talked about it with Laurel. The developer has agreed to dedicate up to 12 feet of right-of-way where his property abuts Willow Avenue, so that from 7th Street, at least from 7th Street to 12th Street, we can add a turning lane. And we've known that's been needed for many, many years. The big issue for us, one of the biggest issues, is acquiring the right-of-way, which is very, very expensive. And, that at least we would have, that's a starting point. And with Tech owning a bulk of the property north of that, we're in our preliminary discussions with them, they would give some thought to dedicating a right-of-way. And if we can go to TDOT with, hey, we've got the right-of-way, a big part of the cost taken care of, we would hope that would speed up the process. And of course, we've talked about this too. Tech has a new master plan for their entire campus that includes improvements to Willow. So we're hoping all this dovetails together at some point. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's something that we're working towards.
Yes, sir. Would you mind coming up front so we can?
I recently got a book from the city of Cookeville for the Regional Planning Commission, and I was going over different types of roads. They're called arterial roads, collector roads, and local roads. And 7th Street, as far as I see, is classified as a collector road. And a collector road is supposed to be a minimum of 30 feet wide from inside curb to inside curb. Measuring 7th Street, now, since it was moved, we only have 24 feet 6 inches. Taking the right-of-way from the center of the road, the minimum right-of-way on a major collector road is 80 feet or 60 feet on a minor. I'll assume that it's a minor road, even though it's classified like 12th Street or Spring Street, which is the major. Now, the right-of-way is 60 feet. Measuring the apartments, the first 2 units are only 19 feet 6 inches from the curb. They are tremendously into the right-of-way. All the other units are 23 feet. We're talking at least 7 feet into the right-of-way, even if we were going to keep the road the way it was. Now, if you're going to add a turning lane, you were stating that you have that wall that lady had mentioned before. The sidewalks he reduced down to 4 feet. In the collector roadways, they're supposed to be 5 feet wide. There are only 4 feet in that road. And he also has insufficient parking. I counted his parking spaces. He is about 26 short on this unit alone. I'd like to know why he's short. He's supposed to have 1.25 units per apartment, and he's way short. Why is this being approved?
Well, I would encourage you to read further in the code. When you have more than 50 units, that drops to 2 parking spaces per unit. He exceeds the amount of parking that's required. It's been reviewed in depth. It's 1.25 for the first 50 units. Following that, it drops to 2 units. It's 1.25 per bedroom. So he exceeds the parking requirements. On the right-of-way, there's never been 60 feet of right-of-way there. We have not reduced the right-of-way. The right-of-way's been increased. The street has not been narrowed. It's the same width it was to begin with. The sidewalk, he matched what was installed by the city already at the intersection, and we had already installed part way up through, well, matter of fact, all that on 7th the city of Cookeville installed.
When you start a new structure, you're supposed to go with the new codes. You don't go with the old codes. I was told,
The sidewalks are already there on 7th Street.
but once he bought it, he should replace it to the current codes of 5 feet. That's like saying, well, if I'm going to build a house, maybe I'll do it 24 inches on center instead of 16. I'll go by the old codes.
Well,
That's what you're saying.
You know, I guess, and you're making. I appreciate your point in the fact that you're trying to keep leash development in the fact that you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, but the fact of the matter is that regardless of how that road is classified, okay, it was, I hate to use this term, it was what it was, and it is what it is. It was a small road. It wasn't a collector road. It's a tiny road, okay, and to meet the standards of what you're talking about, you'd be up here if we did that. Because we'd be bulldozing trailers and all kinds of stuff in order to make that road a major collector road. I mean, that 80 feet number you talked about, I mean, I go there all the time.
I'm saying a minor collector road, not a major collector road.
I mean, still, in order to meet that standard, we would be bulldozing down all kinds of houses and parking lots and stuff like that. And this, and you would be up here because of that. So I still am going to vote for this because it is an improvement. It follows the plan, and it gives us the opportunity to continue to improve a very important intersection in our community, and to meet the sort of standards that you're talking about. Although I appreciate the ideals that you mentioned, that it's just it doesn't meet the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is we've got a small tiny collector street that was in, basically the homes were in violation at the time as far as their setbacks, and we're finally getting them into code.
Well, the 60 foot is what's required for new street construction, not for existing streets. What we do, we try to acquire right-of-way, which is done in this case. He has dedicated right-of-way to the city. We've not had to purchase that right-of-way. It's dedicated as part of this development so that, if necessary, the street could be widened. One of the statements he said is these houses are in the right-of-way. They are not within the right-of-way. These townhouses all meet setbacks outside the right-of-way. They're on individual, privately owned property.
Even at 19 feet 6 inches from the curb, they're in the right-of-way.
They're not within the right-of-way. You're assuming a 60-foot right-of-way. There's not 60 feet of right-of-way there.
What I'm saying is you have 19 feet 6 inches from the curb to the front door. If you were ever to widen that street, you'd be right on top of that door.
Well, if we were to widen it to a 5-lane road, yes, we probably would.
No, 3-lane road. 3-lane road, a turning lane.
It's 3 lanes there now, where you're measuring from.
The road was pulled in.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is that I'm hearing from our very respectful gentleman over here, Mr. You didn't
identify himself.
Excuse me?
You didn't identify yourself. I'm sorry.
Oh, Louis Tomaso.
Mr. Tomaso, I really appreciate your and I respect your opinions on this, but what I'm hearing is what I'm hearing just from what you're talking about is that you're assuming this is not being done in good faith, that the city officials and the city council is not doing this in good faith, and I would disagree with you on that. I think, given the situation that it's at, I think that the administrators of the city and especially the planning commission is looking at this in its entirety in good faith, and that good faith is to improve not only that street but improve the area. And let's remember that this area is, I use this word, is blighted.
I don't mind improvement, but they should follow the rules and the regulations of what you're prescribing.
And I think in good faith. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I think this council and our administrators are doing that in good faith, and I'm going to vote according to that. So.
I still think 19 feet 6 inches is too close to the road for any building, and you have 2 units that close.
Thank you, Mr. Tomaso.
Appreciate your opinion. Appreciate your conversation.
Anything else? No. No, good. Seeing none, I'll vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
All right, on to item 5. Consider on second and final reading, ordinance 131017, RAO redevelopment area overlay zoning for 423 and 429 West Broad Street and 116 and 118 Chestnut Avenue. Sponsors Mr. James Mills.
Mayor, council members, this is the location of the property being considered for our 3rd RAO. One change from first reading is this now has a official name. It's now the West Broad Cottages. I think prior when we looked at this, it was the Stover Gall Division RAO, but they do have a new fancy name for it. Here's the location of the property within our comprehensive plan. As you can see, it's well within an area identified as being in need of redevelopment, revitalization. And one thing to remember about these RAOs, which we've talked about before, to encourage development in these areas, the city does and has the authority to grant variances, to reduce setbacks, reduce parking, and so forth. And that's part of the incentive to get people to go into these areas. Here's the area as zoning. As you can see, it's primarily zoned CG, general commercial, with underlying zoning, and to the north there off of Chestnut, there is a small area that's zoned as RD, residential single family and duplex. Existing development, it currently has a single family house and a 2-unit apartment. There were 3 other dilapidated houses that have been removed. And here is the preliminary REO plan. As you can see from it, it indicates that there will be 36 townhouses built, which will be clustered into 5 groups of 6 units and 2 groups of 3 units. The 12 of the lots 1 through 9 and the upper 36s would be 2-story units. The remaining units, these units in here, are all single-story units. These would be all brick. The approval of the plan indicates that there would be an increase in density of 3 dwelling units. So previously, under the current zoning, you could do 33. And as an encouragement here, we've allowed 3 additional, proposing to allow 3 additional units. It also includes a reduction of rear setbacks along the shared property lines along the east and the west. That's been reduced from 15 feet to 10 feet in this plan. And it also would include the approval of assistance in street lighting. This is the same as in the university, and basically what the difference here is, the city would normally pay for a wooden pole. In this case, all these developments are doing upgraded lighting, and the city typically pays up to the cost of the wood poles, and the developer does the rest. And they're asking that which is standard for us, but they're wanted specifically noted that would happen in this case. According to the submitted development schedule, all existing structures would be removed within 60 days of approval of the REO, with new construction to begin thereafter and to be completed in 1.5 years. The plans indicate that sidewalks would be constructed along Chestnut Avenue, and that rain gardens on West Broad Street and Chestnut Avenue would be utilized for stormwater detention instead of detention ponds. All the proposed units will be accessed from an interior private street. In this case, the name is now Miley. Canopy trees are to be planted along all street frontages. Assuming the overlay is approved tonight, the Planning Commission will consider for approval the final RAO plan on November 25th, 2013, next Monday night. The final RAO plan must conform substantially with the preliminary RAO plan, which is what you're reviewing tonight. Any substantial modifications have to be resubmitted to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has approved the preliminary RAO concept plan for the development of 36 single-family attached dwellings and has approved the requested setback reductions and recommends that the Council enacts RAO zoning, authorize the requested street lighting assistance. The Planning Department concurs with this recommendation, and we've had no calls for comments since first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
The setbacks, did you state what they were, just for the record?
It has a 50-foot setback off of Broad, a 20-foot setback off of Chestnut. Again, RD, we talked about this in the others, it's a 20-foot setback. The interior setbacks here, if it's commercial, it has 0 setback. High density requires 15 feet, so it was a reduction from 15 to 10 feet, so it has 10 foot, a minimum of 10 feet of rear setbacks.
Why does Franklin have 30 feet?
The zone change. There's different zones in that area. We have multiple zones. We have CG, CL, RD, RS5. All those have slight variations in their setbacks.
So the setback on Chestnut is 20 feet?
In this section it is, yes.
Section.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As you get closer here, there's commercial zoning in here, and it goes up to 30 feet.
Any questions, comments?
None for me.
I'm just pleased that the RAO this overlay is taking off. I mean, there are places in Cookeville that desperately need looking into and development, and I just am grateful that people are coming in and taking advantage of it in a good way.
Right.
We would encourage anybody else that's interested in this to
Yeah.
come to our office, and we're going to work with you to try to get development in these areas. And this is not there's 2 other areas identified in the plan that we want to promote and encourage people to look at, to acquire, and redevelop. And I think you can see from these that the city Planning Commission, the council, city staff are all willing to work with developers to try to encourage redevelopment in these areas.
And all they need is what, a minimum of an acre?
An acre, and then even outside these areas, if you have 2 acres and we can indicate or show us that it's an area in need of redevelopment, we can consider it there, and you can have the same type of incentives to develop.
Yes, sir.
I would like to encourage you people in the future to give serious consideration to the build-out as close as you've done on 7th Street. And I go back to my earlier comment. Had we taken 8th Street, which only ran 2 blocks, and moved that whole footprint north, that distance, we could have widened 7th Street at a later time. And there's only like 3 or 4 houses on 8th Street. After the RAO is done, the only thing you got left is on the north side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making that comment for the future, that these setbacks have to be looked at for the growth of the street as well as the growth of the community.
Right.
That's my view.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a good point. Anything else?
No.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. On to new business. Consider awarding, item 6, consider awarding bids for water meters and PVC water pipe. Sponsors the Water Quality Control Department, Mr. Ronnie Kelly.
Mayor and council, we recently opened bids, trying to think what's first. That's the water pipe, some 10-inch water pipe, and we'd recommend the low bidder meeting spec on that Southern Supply. And we did an annual bid on water meters also, and we would recommend the low bidder meeting specifications.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? All vote.
Thank you.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Item 7, consider awarding bids for luminaries, transformers, and wire. Sponsor is Mr. Tony Peak with the Electric Department.
Mayor and council, you should have 3 bid tabulations in front of you. The first one being the luminaries for 350-watt metal halides and 1,000-watt metal halides. Recommend Stuart C. Irby as the low bidder for both those items, meeting specifications. The second bid tabulation schedule is for 2 150 kVA pad mount transformers. Recommend DECO as the low evaluated bidder, meeting specifications. And finally, the 1-aught underground primary cable, 5,000 feet. Recommend Westco as the low bidder, meeting specifications. Recommend your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. Got a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll vote.
4 yes votes, motion
Thank you.
carries.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. All right. This is a portion of the meeting we hear from officers, councilmen, and city manager.
Wait, we
Wait,
got
we got 2 more items.
we've got
more items
item
we
9
added.
and 10, and
We've added.
Okay.
Put your little notes up there.
Are we going to do 8 first?
Well, it's 11 now.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
oh, sorry.
We're going to do 8 first? Before
Yeah.
we do 9 and 10?
Yeah, do it. Did we
have to-
interrupt
Just checking.
you? Just sorry.
We'll be able to hear from,
But I couldn't-
do they get to hear twice? I mean, people get to speak twice, or you just want to move 8 to 11? Just keep going, taking care of business.
Say we do number 8.
Okay.
Let's do number 8.
That comes after 7.
Right on, Mr. Mayor. Just go ahead and do it.
Just remember, Alma is the parliamentarian.
That is exactly right.
Alma is the
All
Let me
right.
get my Robert's Rules of Order.
Item 8. Hold a public hearing on the 6-month progress report for plan of services for the Bennett Road Extension Annexation Area. Sponsors Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members were required by state law to do an annual or a 6-month and then annual report on the plan of services implementation for areas that we've annexed. Also required to hold a public hearing. This would qualify as our public hearing. The Bennett Road Extension Annexation Area was annexed earlier this year. The 6-month report's been prepared and was recently published in the Herald Citizen. The report indicates that police, fire, solid waste collection, water, street maintenance, street signs, planning and zoning, and recreational facilities are provided as we specified in the plan of services. Those property owners already provided natural gas service by the city of Cookeville have had their rates reduced to the inside city rate. Gas service has not yet been extended to the one area that's unserved in this area, which is along Reeser Lane, has not yet been extended. The plan of services specifies that natural gas will be extended to this area when it's economically feasible and when based upon customer demand. Sanitary sewer has not yet been provided. The plan of services specifies that sewer service will be provided when economically feasible and based on the same criteria, standards, and policies used to determine the expansion of sanitary sewer service in the unserved portions of the present corporate limits. The plan of services specifies that electrical service in this annexation area will continue to be provided by the Upper Cumberland Co-op, and that the city will pay the co-op for the provision of street lighting and will request that the co-op provide it within 1 year after the effective date of annexation. To date, 43 of the 106 planned lights have been installed, and plans are currently being developed for the installation of the remaining lights. That is our report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Motion for approval?
It is a public hearing, so if you have
Public
any,
hearing. Okay.
have any comments from the public.
Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Mills.
You're welcome.
Now we'll go to the additional items. Item 9, consider awarding bid for face pieces. Sponsors Fire Department Chief Roger Fuqua.
Mayor, Council, we just recently received bids on our SCBA face pieces for our breathing air. EVS was low bid, $12,821.05, and I recommend approval.
Thank you, Chief. Got a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? All vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Item 10, consider awarding bid for exterior renovations for CPAC. Sponsors Leisure Services Department, Mr. Rick Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you know, We have been looking at the exterior metal on the Performing Arts Center and Police Department for quite some time, and we worked with Richard Rinks and Associates to study and evaluate the best solution to our problem of peeling paint and rusting of that metal. We looked at various options over a long period of time, and Rinks and Associates recommended, after careful study, recommended replacing the metal and developed specifications for that metal replacement. We advertised and received one bid from Cookeville Sheet Metal in the amount of $266,600. While this is a sole bid, other contractors did inquire with Rinks and Associates about this project and chose not to bid on the project. So we believe this is a good bid, it's a fair price, and it is under the budgeted amount, and I recommend your approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you
Commissioner
might
Woods,
have.
a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I do, Mr. Mayor, if you would please. Mr. Woods, why did they choose not to bid? I mean, was it? Do you happen to know? Or
I don't really know exactly why. I will tell you this: Mr. Bennett told me in the mandatory pre-bid meeting that we had that if it wasn't here in town, he wouldn't be bidding on it because it's a difficult. It's difficult to get to. In the what we're replacing of the metal, it's not an easy thing to tackle, and he said that they wouldn't be bidding on it if it weren't here in town. So that may have had some consideration. I'm not really sure why others didn't bid.
And this is under the budgeted?
It is under the budgeted amount, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And just for the council members, or just for your information, I mean, I had the conversation with the Rinks, Richard Rinks and Associates had a conversation with them, and we've done business with them for a very, very, very long time, as you well know, and they've been very well respected in the community, and I value their opinion very much because they have saved our city quite a bit of money in past, and they do, and there's a letter here saying that they support this bid, even though it is a single bid. They do support this and saying it's a great price. It's a great price, and the work will be done very well, and hopefully it'll last. How many years, Rick?
At least as long as it's lasted this time.
Like
lasted this time. Hopefully another 40 years.
Okay.
At least.
Past your lifetime, possibly.
Oh.
Well, that puts it in perspective.
Thanks, Jim.
I might get to see a new roof.
He just called me.
I know.
Well, it's an unusual, when you look at it, you see that the slant on that's unusual, and Cookeville Sheet Metal, they're a Cookeville company, so.
And they do a lot of this type of work and
Right,
are
exactly.
experts in this, and so it's a very reputable company, and
Folks
we'll do
had
a
a
good
fair
job.
opportunity to bid, so let them have it.
Yeah, there was just a little bit of hesitation because there was one bid,
Sure.
but reputable company we've dealt with before, came in under budget. Engineering firm completely
Absolutely.
backs them, thinks they've done a great job too, and I mean, proof is in the pudding. They've done good work for us before. So
Yeah, when we were doing budget, we were guessing or an estimate what it would cost, and this is great that it came
Yeah.
below that.
Well, this is trivial, but what color is it going to be?
It's supposed to match what is there approximately now, unless you specify something else, Ms.
I wanted the color sign, and they wouldn't let me do that, so we better stick with what we've got.
Fluorescent.
Might ought to point out, too, that we did look at just trying to remove that paint, and it did have some lead in it.
That was one of the options that we studied carefully and had to look at the paint that is chipping, see if we could keep the metal that was there by just sandblasting or removing the finish on it now and refinishing it. And because of the lead content in that paint, it was determined that to recapture all of that as we sandblasted it off would be very difficult and very costly. And we decided that it was best to go ahead and replace that metal rather than try to toy with the paint that's on there and remove it.
Well,
can't even imagine how you could do that.
I can't either. And hasn't there been some leaks at the performing?
There have been.
Yeah, and so this is probably past time. Good to do.
Well, that's kind of somewhat of a separate issue because this is not really roof replacement. This
Right.
It's not the flat roofs and even the sloped roof over the audience. This is the area around the surrounding areas, the mansard, the fascia, the siding areas that are visible, that are seen, are somewhat decorative. But yes, we've had leaks in that too. And so this will take care of that aspect of it.
Now, this building was constructed late 70s, 78?
It opened in 1978.
So this is the original
Yes.
fascia?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Pinball machine. That's what it looks like, it's a pinball machine.
All vote.
4 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. All right, this is the part of the meeting where we do open the floor, hear from citizens and/or delegations. Just ask you to keep it 3 minutes, please, and state who you are. That's about it. Anything?
Well, just want to remind people that next Friday is considered Black Friday for the, I've gone totally blank, merchandising and all that. Let's try to keep our money in Cookeville and try to do most of your shopping right here so that we can keep your tax dollars.
So
And
we'll
have a good
receive-
Thanksgiving.
We'll receive your tax dollars.
Receive, right?
Yes, that's right. We will
Not keep.
receive your tax dollars.
And in 2 weeks, we've got the state football championship. It's going to be
Yeah.
at Tech and in Cookeville. That's a big event.
Pray for warm weather.
Warm.
Well, and then the Monday before that is
Christmas parade.
Christmas parade. So,
Tree lighting.
Tree
Tree
lighting
lighting.
at the
CPAC.
CPAC.
You like that tree?
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I was just going to point out, December 2nd is the tree lighting and the Christmas parade, and please shop local.
Yes.
It helps everyone. So, anything else? And happy Thanksgiving, by
Yes.
the way.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Safe Thanksgiving.
All right. This meeting's adjourned.